I'll just introduce the class and we will hear about all of the final projects. So it looks like we're live. Fantastic. It's finals week, which means all kinds of fun stuff is happening on campus. Fun being relative, of course. So I'm Krista Bailey. I have had the privilege and pleasure of teaching a class in our sustainability studies program called Sustainability, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship. And I suspect that we have learned quite a few new things and new approaches that we had not considered possible in terms of sustainability. So we're going to hear about some of the projects, actually 4 of the projects, I hope, that we've had done by the students, really bringing together a lot of different materials that I think each of them are going to speak on a different topic and a different approach and a different thing that we did in class this semester, and how they pulled all that together and how bringing sustainability, innovation, and entrepreneurship together can help to address some issues, challenges, and opportunities that we're facing in the world today. So with that said, I will mostly not be talking, although we will pause between each presentation for questions. So if you have them, please type them up and I will share them. And other, of course, classmates, if you have questions for the person presenting, you can unmute and ask away. That said, I will stop and I'm going to turn over to the first person. We have Ashtyn Johnson, and she's got a presentation to share with us from her work this semester. So it's all yours.
Hello. So I am going to screen share. There we are. All right. So all good? I'll say, well, let me have it in the same window to see you all. So, but I'll start off with the presentation. I chose a Prezi, and I did my project over how policy and infrastructure impact sustainable development. I chose the iceberg visual aid because I thought it was very helpful in explaining how to dive into this topic. I have the introduction of kind of the beginning topics that you should know, and then once you dig deeper, where it gets a little messy and how sustainable development really ties into infrastructure. So we'll start with the introduction. The main focus of this presentation will be on how infrastructure plays a role in sustainable development and how policy can help sustainable infrastructure become a reality. So then on to sustainable development and the importance of infrastructure. One of the most important elements of sustainable development is sustainable infrastructure. Infrastructure is a key element of economic growth and development in society. Elements of sustainable infrastructure are energy efficiency, transportation, air quality, community health, water quality, local food production, and renewable energy. The impacts of sustainable infrastructure are increased opportunities, job creation, access to necessities, it helps to protect the natural resources, increased resilience, local procurement, and increased quality of life. Now we're going a little bit deeper. We're going underneath the surface in our sustainable development iceberg. So for environmental sustainability, I do have 2 quotes from our one and only Krista Bailey, but I wanted to start with the 3 pillars of sustainability, and that is the social, environmental, and economic themes under sustainability. The first quote I wanted to share is from Krista, and it says, "It drives me crazy when people talk about environmental sustainability because I don't think there's any such thing. You can't do sustainability with a focus on just the environment. It has to wrap up all of those social, environmental, and economic themes. I think those interconnections aren't reported on great." And she's right, they're not reported on great. What we see a lot of the time is the face of sustainability being environmental impacts and what negative impacts we are contributing. It goes back to that. And then the second quote I thought was important. I know we're only supposed to share one, but I really wanted to share this one. She said, "It's not a new concept that sustainability relates to justice and equity issues. It's something that just hasn't been reported on or spelled out or uplifted because it's often easier to keep people's focus on the issue, on one issue at a time." And I get that. But as an interdisciplinary scholar and academic instructor, I cannot stress enough how important it is to be able to make those connections, because life is not lived in one plane. It's a diverse, complicated, messy place, and if we can't make those connections between all of these related elements, then we're never going to get anything done. And I thought those two quotes really helped me tie together the three pillars of sustainability to get the main idea that it's not just environmental impacts. There are different topics and themes that go into sustainable development. And then we're to the big part of the iceberg, a lot further down from the surface. Sustainable development, racial equity, and infrastructure. What's the connection? I wanted to start off with a little kind of other visual aid, and it's the Smiths versus the Millers. On the left, we have the Smiths neighborhood. It has come to a standstill. There are abandoned homes, there are homeless people, inadequate nutrition and food insecurity, inadequate childcare, a lack of access to healthcare, and the neighborhood is unsafe. There's also a lack of public transportation, and that can include bus systems, sidewalks, and more. The people in this community are predominantly people of color. And then we have the Millers. I put the Jones, whoops, I was messing with names. The Millers neighborhood has plenty of fresh food markets, a robust system, parks, and health centers, daycares, and good schools. The people in this community are predominantly white, and they have access to those sidewalks. The picture I put for the Millers is from Heritage Square. I am fortunate enough that I live in this area. If I wanted to, I could take the sidewalk to the grocery store. I could go a little bit farther, go get dinner. There are other apartments that link up to this area. I could have a very happy, healthy, social life in addition to my environmental aspects of the community. I have a dog park. I have a lot of nice things in my community that I know others do not, and I'm very fortunate. So I just want to start out with that. And I wanted to go into how infrastructure intersects with the racial equity. For a long time, infrastructure has continued to underserve communities of color, and this includes a lack of public transportation, a lack of good education, access to clean drinking water, and exposure to air pollution, such as hazardous waste, toxic emissions, and noxious materials. And there's an increased distance between jobs and the neighborhoods of people of color. A plan that I wanted to address, and that I did address in one of my current events, was the Biden infrastructure plan. This is an example of policy in growing sustainable development, and this plan is a $2 trillion infrastructure plan, and it includes developments in transportation, water, internet, electricity, homes, schools, buildings, the workforce, and in innovation, which was an especially important topic of this course. I wanted to go more into that plan with what does it target? So one of the goals of the plan is that 40% of all the clean energy infrastructure benefits go to these disadvantaged communities. We often see, in one of the other current events I wrote about, it was about the Casa Pasiva project, and that was talking about the retrofitting buildings and revamping communities that makes it more energy efficient and easier to have a healthy lifestyle. Well, that was happening in an up and coming environment in Manhattan instead of an environment that truly needs it. So I just wanted to point that out, that the clean energy infrastructure benefits going to those communities would help each community prosper. And the key elements of this plan are that key elements of his plan that impact underserved communities are removal of lead pipes, modernizing water systems, high-speed broadband, affordable housing, childcare facilities, VA hospitals, and developments in homes or community-based care for the elderly and those with disabilities. I also wanted to let you know, and a reminder about our sustainable development goals, that this plan targets all of the sustainable development goals, which is really hard sometimes. Like I talked about earlier, we always have the focus on maybe one thing at a time, such as the environmental, social, or economic themes. But this plan hits all 17. We are familiar with them, but I just wanted to list them off. No poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. That one is obviously a very high point of this plan. Reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace and justice strong institutions, and the partnerships for these goals. We go back to the impacts of policy. What else can impact, how else policy can impact sustainable development in these communities? And I just wanted to point out the Green Climate Fund. Back in 2009, we had made the proposal with the United Nations that we would donate $100 billion a year towards these low-income countries. The $100 billion to the low-income countries such as Africa, Asia, and Latin America could be used for pandemic recovery, which is a most recent topic in sustainability, climate disasters, and work towards developing a low fossil fuel economy. Another proposal calls on the Group of 20, the world's 20 largest economies, to, quote, require lenders to offer relief in exchange for a commitment to use some of the newfound fiscal space for a green and inclusive recovery, end quote. With policies that protect the environment and the people that live in that environment, we are protecting our economy and our ability to thrive in a society. I wanted to connect all of these ideas together in one last slide for infrastructure, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the 3 pillars of sustainability. And that is how sustainable infrastructure supports inclusive growth, enhances access to basic services, and promotes environmental sustainability. I will share this presentation and this specific visual aid, and I hope you all take the time to learn about how sustainable infrastructure plays into each and every SDG goal. And that concludes my presentation. All right.
Wonderful.
Any questions?
Yeah, thanks so much, Ash. I'm sure there's questions. That really brought a lot of things together, perhaps in ways that people hadn't considered in this class or beyond. So, any questions from the class? As folks are thinking about that, I will ask, so you shared the content and kind of the focus of your project, but what did you end up doing for your project?
Oh yes, you caught me. I did a podcast, and I thought that format was easier because I was considering a video or possibly kind of like tying like a PSA into a 10-page, or what is it? I think it was a white paper. But I decided on the podcast just because I know how easy it is to access those and how easy it is to listen to them in your free time. I know a lot of people feel like, oh, if it's a video, I have to watch the video or, actually pay attention. For podcasts, I mean, when you're driving in the car, when you're doing something at work that you don't have to focus on anything. I mean, there's a lot of ways that podcasts are beneficial. So I thought that was the best way to get the information across.
And do you have plans on publishing that on your own podcast channel, or what are you going to do with it next?
I thought about it. I actually am not sure what I'm doing for work in the fall. My school schedule kind of keeps me from having a full-time job that's during the day. So I thought about making my own little podcast channel where I just report on different topics in sustainability because I like learning about them, and I think other people would too if they had the access.
Well, I got to say, there have been a lot of people that have launched sustainability careers by developing podcasts as students, whether undergraduate or graduate or doctoral students. I don't know why, but I found a ton of them just this semester. Like, oh, who's that? Oh, they started by doing this cool podcast on sustainability connections people hadn't been talking about. So it's possible. So.
Yeah. I get excited thinking about it. There's so many things.
Other questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to get your opinion on the Smart Street initiative that was started in South Bend a couple of years, and how you feel that's like impacted South Bend versus somewhere like Mishawaka that doesn't really have one.
I will not lie. I'm not entirely familiar with it locally. I've been trying to get more familiar with sustainability initiatives locally. But you know what? You're inspiring me. I'm going to look at it and I will message you.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's was a major initiative of Pete Buttigieg when he was our mayor, And it's interesting seeing him on a small scale. Well, if you want to consider South Bend small, and then have him elevate himself to national transportation secretary, something like that, whatever he is. It's interesting actually living in South Bend and getting to see the initiative firsthand.
I know I moved here about a little less than 3 years ago, and that has been one of the main things I've heard about South Bend area-wise, how much it's progressed. There have been some negatives, but especially in transportation and, just accessibility for everyone living there who doesn't have transportation, like the cars, that they have sidewalks and everything else, and the bike stations. So I want to learn more.
Alrighty. Well, if questions come up later, I will read them off the live stream, or perhaps your classmates are like, oh, I forgot to ask her about that. So thank you very much, Ash, for going first and paving the way for our next presenter, which will be Corey. And Corey's got something to share with us.
Let's see. Okay. Let's see if you can hear it.
So my final project over the circular economy, I just think that it is really interesting, and I think that everybody needs to learn about it. The circular economy is actually a systematic approach to economic development. It is designed to benefit businesses, society, and the environment. The current economy we have now is a linear economy where what is made is going to be basically trash eventually. However, that circular economy contrasts our current take, make, and waste linear model. It's regenerative by design, and it also aims to gradually decouple growth from the consumption of finite resources. So it's important because it looks farther down the line than a linear economy does. A linear economy just looks straight down the line to waste. However, circular economy wants to keep reusing those products until it's the end of their lifespan. Our current single-use economy is also inefficient. It just generates too much waste. But by changing to a circular economy, it will help focus on designing waste out of the system by decreasing the consumption of finite resources and implementing positive benefits for everyone. This is actually the picture I saw on Instagram. I was really confused. I thought that I personally was doing a recycling economy, and I thought it was actually a lot better for the environment. But if you look at it, it's really not. It's basically the same as a linear economy. You just use it a couple more times, but in the end, it does end up like trash. It's hard to see how much trash is actually being generated. Personally, when I thought I was doing a recycling economy, I thought I was doing good. But I was really confused at first when I saw the circular economy. I did not know how it was possible to not make any waste, especially from like fast food restaurants or just basically anything. When you go shopping, you have tags, hangers, all that stuff. So I thought it was really interesting. So we currently do have a linear economy like I described in the last slide. Its emphasis is on products and not services, hence why it all ends up in the trash very easily. A circular economy, its emphasis is on services and not products. The focus is to regenerate products and use them until the end of their service life, and then keep using them. It also supports conservation, and it helps reduce waste. The main source that I used for my project was this book called The Future We Choose, Surviving the Climate Crisis. I heard about it a couple times just from, I had to do a book report in a different class, and I was searching through different books, and it actually came up, and so I chose two different books. I chose a different book for that book report, and I picked this one just because I thought it was really interesting. I wanted to read it. After I finished the book, this project was presented, and I just thought it would be perfect for this project. One quote actually that really stood out to me, I wrote it down. It is, "Future generations will most likely look back at this moment as the single most significant turning point for action." So it might not seem a lot right now, but when you're reading this book, it is just the final push that it motivates you that you can do whatever you want to fight this climate crisis. This book actually ties in perfectly because since we currently have a linear economy, we are going towards the first future. This book presented two alternate futures. The first one was if we did nothing about the current climate crisis and we let the Earth's average temperature get above 3 degrees Celsius by the year 2100. It explained it as really hot and you had to wear a mask in order to go outside. Just because of the air pollution, it would get you sick, it would burn your lungs. And only few people could afford this. Like the upper middle class and the rich could really afford it. It was a special mask. It wasn't something that you wear like right now with COVID. It was like a specialized one. In this future, there were few to no forests left. The coral reefs were bleached. There was little scarce wildlife that had either gone extinct or was critically endangered. You weren't allowed to fish anymore. Fishing was illegal just because there were so little numbers of fish just in the ocean. You know how big the ocean is. There were no hunting, nothing like that. There was a lot of crime just because people had to survive for themselves. So they had to get whatever they could for them and their families. The rising sea levels and the melting of the ice caps was actually a huge problem. Millions and millions of people were displaced just because the rising sea levels took their homes, took their cities like Miami, New York. All those people weren't underwater, but just their houses were destroyed, everything like that. Natural disasters increased just with how many there were and the intensities of them. So that also displaced a whole bunch of people. There was drought, famine. It was just an awful, awful future. But however, on the brighter side, the second future is if we keep the Earth's average temperature under 1.5 degrees Celsius by the year 2100. And a way to do that is by reducing our emissions by 50% every decade, starting at, I believe it was 2020. This future showed like trees everywhere. Wherever there was land, there were trees planted to get the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. There was abundant wildlife. It was thriving. There was actually a sense of togetherness with communities, just because everyone was working together for not only themselves, but for their children, their children's children, just future generations. There was a decrease. One of the major things was a decrease in airline use with airplanes and a huge increase in railroads. They actually built or were planning in this future to build bullet trains, and that would take over for planes. Basically, the only planes that would be needed would be like emergencies or overseas, but they would be very limited for those. So that was the second future, and it kind of it mixes with the circular economy, because where we are now is with the linear economy. So we are heading towards that first future. But if we switch and go to a circular economy, we can have that second future. It is not out of reach. It is very attainable. The book also talked about how if you were motivated by this, there were 10 action steps, and they talked like step by step on how to do this, to how to change people's mindsets in a kind way to not only better yourself, but to better them too. And I just thought this book was really important for making it into a circular economy, because a circular economy is very important to attain. And finally, I chose to do a video overview for my final project because I felt that it was the best way to kind of explain what a circular economy is. I'm not very good with using my words, as you may have noticed in this, but I think personally am a visual learner, so I put in pictures, and I just wanted to really tie together what everything was with my sources, with my book, with the circular economy. I just felt that it was the best way to understand what a circular economy was and the easiest way.
Yeah.
Nice job.
Thanks.
Questions?
Yeah. It was really late when I was trying to videotape that last part. And I didn't realize how many times I said until now, which was a lot. I apologize.
Sometimes it's hard to hear yourself speak and you realize all those little things, right? I actually didn't notice it, but maybe because I don't know why, but it sounded fine. Any questions for Corey?
Yeah, I was curious. You talked a lot about like the economic and environmental benefits and impacts of the circular economy. What are some like of the highlights for the social?
For the social, it said that a lot of people would come together because they would be working together for this one goal, instead of like fighting each other. It said that like the community engagement and support would like increase, which would then help like local governments, which would help state governments, which would help national governments in the end. But it would take a little bit to get there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. Do you think that the circular economy is something that we can achieve publicly without the inclusion of like governmental oversight, or do you think that's something that is going to need to happen to force the circular economy?
I personally think it will need government support because there's like a lot of corporations that are in charge, or not really in charge of, but are some of the main factors with pollution. So I think if they're like multi-million-dollar corporations, they're not going to stop just because the public wants them to. If they're making their money, that's what they're going to do. So I think the governments would need to support the public's opinion and have to do something about those corporations.
I don't see other questions getting posted yet, but maybe they'll come along later. But thank you very much for sharing about circular economy. It's definitely a really compelling concept, but also something that is really foreign, not just to you. I appreciate your honesty explaining, like, I didn't understand what I wasn't doing right here, and how does that work? I think most people feel that way. And maybe it will need government support to move this forward. Maybe corporations can move it forward. There's been a lot of discussion about it in the corporate realm, as we've seen. So maybe that will impact things, but it'll be interesting how that plays out in our lives, because it won't just be the economy that was working circularly, I suspect, but also our own lives and habits and purchasing decisions, right? This could have a massive shift coming ahead. So thank you so much for the introduction, more than an introduction, to this concept. Any final words? Fair enough. Thank you so much. We have two other presentations. We've got next up will be Nate and then Destiny. So Nate, can you tell us about your project?
Of course. Yeah, mine's less of a presentation. I thought I'd be sharing my video because I worked really hard on it. But anyway, so the the focus of my project was to do a critical analysis of how technological innovation and sustainability were interrelated. As many of you guys know, I work in IT, so technology and sustainability really interests me. I was able to pull information from a class reading in one of my interviews that outlined the role that purpose had in doing innovation. I was able to look at the role sustainability plays in driving innovation in companies. My project was able to use research by the NDRC, the National Resource Defense Council, to look at wasted energy that we use by having too many devices being plugged in, and that's a byproduct of the increase in technology innovations that are the production of like smart products for use in the homes. I concluded that technological innovation promotes sustainability predominantly when it becomes a key goal of the business. Otherwise, even the best technological innovations inhibit sustainability. A key thought-provoking quote I had was by Jeff Fromm from Sustainability Can Be Powered by Innovation. It was a week 3 reading. It is, quote, "The major issue of the movement is whether purpose is something that you're just doing in order to enhance your brand reputation, or is it really something that is core to your everyday business? Making it core to the business eliminates the false choice that companies are faced with for decades, that purpose and profit are somehow diametrically opposed. When purpose is core to the business, the opportunity is fully aligned with both profit and purpose into a single direction." And so that quote really, for me, reinforced. Oh, I guess I didn't say end quote, but yeah, that quote really enforced the point I wanted to make about technological innovation. That sustainability happens when it is purposeful, and a lot of companies that, like Corey had said in the circular economy explanation, when you kind of are just trying to do sustainability offhand, it doesn't really get achieved. And so I was really looking deeply at how technology as a byproduct sometimes has sustainability, but you really need to have sustainability be the key focus of the technology to really drive sustainability to where we need it to be. The current event that informed my project the most was a week 10 discussion of corporate social responsibility, CSR. I work with Cisco products at my job, and so I actually stumbled on the article when I was looking for something not related to class. And I didn't include this in as my final project. And it was an article about the Internet of Things and how Cisco is able to use sustainability approaches in the methods that they use for Internet of Things. So Internet of Things is basically like the Internet of Things, right? It's in the title, but things like your phone, smartphone, a lot of smart products, like receivers. So how we use the internet and technology in that way. And so that was like a very eye-opening current event for me, because I was able to like think about, okay, yeah, we're using technology in our everyday lives, but is it actually like promoting sustainability? That was a deep question I wanted to ask. And then I ended up finding pretty much the main key source of my project was this research done by the NDRC. Yeah, it was called the Home Idle Loads, and it was like I said, it was a look at the wasted energy we have by having things plugged into outlets at our homes. And while I'm unwavering in my belief that technological innovation happens for the betterment of society, it doesn't mean that we can ignore the important role sustainability needs to play in dictating this. We need more technology companies whose sole purpose for existence is increasing sustainability throughout the world. And this article was just really mind-blowing. Some of the key points, it was like $19 billion a year are wasted in by just having things plugged into your outlets. It ends up being 25% of your electricity that you consume in a household per year. And studying the innovation throughout the class, it's just interesting, why haven't we done with something so simple? So I kind of played around with innovation and the way that we can use innovation. So I had the idea that we could have like almost like tablets per se. If you could have like an off switch almost for your home. Obviously, you would keep like key security and have that locked down. But if there was some way like you could innovate a way to like turn the power off, that would save $19 billion a year. And I think it was something 37% of carbon emissions that we produce, a high number. I chose a video format for my final project, and I chose it for a few main reasons. The first reason is I wanted to be able to vocalize some thoughts out loud. My papers are good, but like you read it in your head. I didn't have anyone to converse with in a podcast form, and I'm awful at art. One time I entered an art competition. It was an elementary art competition, and I was an adult, and I actually got last place, so I'm not an artist. Also, videos seem to be the news media communication of the future. Videos are everywhere, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, and then you have a giant like YouTube. I prefer to watch YouTube videos instead of something like Netflix or Amazon Prime, especially when I do household chores. Videos on the internet are mostly made for getting views because the creators get revenue from their views. But there's also a large portion of the internet community that exists for the purpose of education, and I wanted to definitely play a part of that community. So I felt that by making a video, I'd be able to contribute in at least some small capacity to the commitment of furthering education. So I made a great video. It was actually probably the first video I have made since maybe like high school, and so it was pretty cool to use. I used Premiere Pro, which is from IUSB Creative Commons, or not Creative Commons, Creative Cloud. I forget Adobe Creative Cloud. So thanks IU for that. It's a great resource, and yeah, it was really cool. I spent a lot of time playing with like the different videos and the effects. So I definitely encourage everyone to go check out the video. I don't care about the clout or anything. I just care about the conversation. I thought it was really good, introspective look of how innovation and technology are intertwined. But to close, I guess you would say the thesis of my project would be that sustainability happens during technological innovation, but not at really the rate we need it to be. Technological innovation needs to include sustainability as a key business goal. That's it.
Thanks, Nate, and thanks for kind of rolling with a different format than you expected. I'm sorry we're having technical, it's such a great video. It was a huge format, and so we haven't been able to actually receive that yet, but we will figure that out. And we'll be placing it on a link with this presentation that's being posted. And Nate, can we share this out on the Center for Sustainable Futures YouTube channel? Can we post it other places and share it with your classmates?
Of course. Well, I was able to like access the video. That's why I was a little confused. I didn't know if you wanted me to play it. It's like long though. It's like 8 minutes almost.
Yeah, well, and it's not working on my end, so I don't really.
Oh, I mean, I was able to go to that link and it pulls up. It says Google Drive can't scan for viruses, and you can hit download anyway. It's not a virus. I made it myself.
Yeah,
it's not compromised. Unless I'm a spy or something, you never know.
Well, thanks for giving us an overview of your project. I definitely am excited to see it now that I've heard about it and what you're covering. But as maybe people are formulating questions or pondering what you shared, I have a question. It made me think when you were talking about the vampire power, is how I've heard it referred to. A lot of students in the Foundations of Sustainability class learn about this. They talk about it. They're just completely horrified that this is all happening. And at the end of the course, as you all may recall, and for those watching, this is what you do at the end of your introductory course is you create a household sustainability action plan using the tools and the processes that you've learned throughout the course. Trying to put all your knowledge into action for yourself before we take it out to look at real world issues like we're doing in this class. But most students have in their plan, well, I'll tell you, I'm gonna unplug everything every night. And I find that very curious that people think that that big of a habit change is going to be the first best thing that they can do. And yes, you make a great point, and there is very compelling data that this could have a huge impact. I don't unplug everything every night. I have not trained myself to unplug everything, nor have I convinced anybody in my family to unplug anything. So this idea of an off switch for your house, I think is really cool because people recognize that it's an issue and they want to change it, but making that big of a habit change is really hard. Like anyone who's ever started or stopped doing anything knows how hard it is to change a habit, right?
Was there a question?
There is a question. So
Okay,
this is
okay.
sorry, it's a long rambling preface, but the point is it's like, it's definitely an issue and people want to address it. And you guys have probably all encountered this before, like, oh yeah, I'll unplug every night. So is this your idea for like a tech company that would foster sustainability? Are you going to be working on an off switch for homes? Because you
I guess that's not really my idea. I think if I ever had an idea to be like an entrepreneur, it would be like a dedicated technologically, it'd be a dedicated technology consulting business for sustainability. So it'd be able to like it would be like a sustainability company that's based in IT that would be able to work with like larger organizations and pretty much try to change the way that they that corporations did business. So be able to work with like Microsoft, be able to work with Cisco. A lot of these larger companies have sustainability departments, like entire departments that they spend millions of dollars on. But then you're missing like a large facet of the economy that might not have the resources. And so if you could actually have some sort of consultation, like consultation's huge, but make it into like a large enterprise where it is almost like a Salesforce like size business where it's just massive, like a SAP type thing, where your sole existence is the sustainability, but you have products and you're able to do some sort of consulting that goes into businesses and say, okay, why don't we do this? This is for sustainability. And I think that's important. Like I was saying, like I brought up in my project that like technological innovation is good, but a lot of these technological innovations might just be as harmful. Like when you could study like like if you study like the way that we get energy, and I was gonna say one other thing. Oh, and I also covered, that's what I was gonna say, in my project I covered the innovation and how you actually like can go from having an idea, because I was kind of like just brainstorming an idea, throwing it out there, and I looked at SPACs in my research earlier this year. And if for those people who aren't familiar, they're special purpose acquisition companies, and I read a great article that basically was saying that SPACs could be a future method of achieving sustainability. And basically SPACs are a group of people who buy, like they pool money together and then they buy privatized stock in companies to with the goal of, if they buy enough stock, then they can make the company public. And I think that has huge implications for sustainability, because I think if you could essentially have like a sustainability SPAC, you could maybe you may be able to find a private company and then have that company like if people want sustainability, like cool, you can want sustainability for your own house, but it's about where you put the money where your mouth is. And so like if people actually invest in an SPAC, then they're going to be able to go maybe buy a privatized company that doesn't want to listen to what the people have to say, and then they can make it public. And then, okay, no longer CEOs and big suits own it. It's actually the people who own it. So I thought that would be pretty interesting. Yeah. Sorry, now I feel like I'm rambling.
Well, it's obviously it's a really exciting interconnected multifaceted approach. And I'm just very impressed with the way you've pulled a lot of different threads of things we've learned about this semester together around your own interests. This is like the best I could hope for. When actually I've seen everybody do that, like, oh, and there's this coming together around something I find really compelling. So I'm gonna watch for that off switch, though. I think that could that could just go wild if people had something like that. But
yeah, actually, that wasn't even. I had like another really good idea, and I forget what it was. It was like I think in a dream or something. And then I woke up, and of course I didn't remember it. Actually, I stumbled upon my project because I had found that home idle load. I found that home idle load research, and I was like, okay, well, how about this? Every plug I have in, I'm gonna do a push up. And so then I was like, I read that the average was 60 plugged in, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a push up for everyone, and it ended up being 39 in my house. And then I was like doing more reading, and it ended up the average was 40. And I was all excited because I was like, oh, I was way under, but I wasn't really. I was one under the average, so I really am the average. So then I was gonna do 39 push-ups, but I don't even think I could do 39 push-ups in a row. So.
you have to work up to that.
Yeah.
Or start taking plugs out. Do fewer push-ups.
Less. Well, yeah. I was gonna do 39 push-ups a day, and then every plug I take out, I had to do less or something. Maybe. I don't know. I was just joking.
Any other questions for Nate before we move to our final presentation? All righty. Well, if they come up, we'll have a moment at the end for all last questions. So thank you, Nate.
Are you gonna post everyone's projects that you said on the? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes me feel a little better. I was gonna say, like, I mean, not that I wouldn't make it just for you, Krista, but I've definitely put a lot of effort into it.
Absolutely. Yep. So when I get it, I'll be able to post it or get it in a functional format. So
yeah, if you can't access it without leak, I could just I could try different methods. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Our last presentation is from Destiny. So Destiny, if you want to share a screen, if you've got any audio, make sure that's enabled. Or if you want to talk like Nate did, it all works. So it's all yours.
Okay. So for mine, I originally was going to do artwork. And then I was having a hard time coming up with what to do really with that. And I started doing some painting and this and that and realized that it's been a long time. So I changed my mind. I actually made a website and I put a lot of different sort of simple graphic designs that I made on the website. I can't take full credit for them because it was through Adobe and they have their templates, but pulling pieces together. So I will screen share here. Okay. So essentially what I did is almost everything is in a graphic. And then within that, there are different quotes, statements. I can't think of the word I'm wanting, but then at the end of each page, there will also be some information on the topic. Most of it is just the pieces inspired by aspects of it. So when you go to the page, what you should be able to do, I'm having some trouble with it, so I think I might have to do it through my screen. So for this one, if you look within the circle here, you can kind of see all those different aspects of CSR. So I did mine on corporate social responsibility. You'll see like the human rights, trying to come up with solutions, of course, environmental, and then things like inclusivity, donations, that you see half man and a half woman here, showing kind of gender equality, all those different aspects that become part of corporate social responsibility. So then if you click on that, it will take you to the intro page, kind of just discussing what CSR is. So there is that graphic again. And then down here, there is just kind of that broad description that CSR is a business initiative or a way of measuring and regulating themselves so that they can try and have good impacts on community, economy, environment, that triple bottom line of sustainability. Although it wasn't always intended for environment, it's becoming a big aspect of it. So it really has become the full circle of sustainability. Down here, I didn't make these. I stole these. These are just some little infographics, again, showing environment, human rights, sustainable procurement, ethics. Over here, there's the economic growth. And then go back to the home page. This one here just starts with the quote from John Muir. It says, "It's not a blind opposition to progress, but an opposition to blind progress." So this tab talks about why you would choose CSR or why a business might do that. And that kind of goes along with the progress thing in terms of course, every business wants to make progress, but you can't do it blindly. You have to consider how it's impacting your employees, your community, your environment. And so there are a few other graphics in here. Again, they're all just quotes that I thought related or reflected some other aspect of it. This one is pretty straightforward about CSR in and of itself. And then it talks further on moral responsibility. This one down here, I also got from an outside website. This one is more of that basic infographic telling you, you get your satisfied employees, satisfied customers, all of those things that'll go into further on other pages. And then another quote and another one. Down at the bottom, this is probably the page with the most information. I put those 4 main types again of CSR and then sort of why a business might do it and what they might get out of it. So the fact that consumers and employees want to go to businesses or services that share values with them or that they feel are doing something more than just providing a service or a product. And so that obviously attracts more to your business, but it also satisfies other needs within a community. I've got that 60% of Americans hope that businesses will drive social and environmental change where government regulation is not. So I thought that was kind of interesting, as well as 90% wanting to purchase from ethically conscious companies. Of course, a business will gain those long-term employees, happier employees, which do better work, better customer support, good social interest or image, I'm sorry. And then that fulfillment too, and that they're doing something good. Back to the home page. So this one is on environmental aspects. So just a couple more graphics that I put together there. These I actually used my own photos. Got a little bit of art in there. And so this one I didn't put as much information into as in kind of the descriptions, but of course there's the environmental and sustainable like production and service aspect. A business that's doing CSR is going to focus on how they get their energy, how they recycle, how their emissions. That's become a really big one. A lot of companies, part of their initiatives are carbon reductions. I think I read that Google was like at the furthest along in that at this point, I believe. Eco-friendly businesses, travel policies, and then a lot of people also like to see with that the environmental engagement and advocacy. You'll also see companies like, I think Aerie has started using recycled products in their clothing. I haven't looked how far into that, how linear or circular that recycling is, but and then this one here says strive for the good of your community. So this one is coming back to the consumers, employees, communities aspect. This one has a lot of those quotes in there, pointing out that consumers hold the power. And then this idea with this quote was that a lot of employees will become burnt out pretty regularly when they feel that they're going to work and going home and doing nothing. So that idea of CSR fulfilling employee wellness, both physically, mentally, and in the workplace. A little bit on philanthropy. Some classic Jane Goodall quotes. And then on some empathy as well, and working with your brain and your heart. So obviously thinking about your revenue and your product, but also considering what else you can do for your community. Down here, there are a few other stats and quotes, just from some studies on CSR. This one says that 85% of millennials believe that making a positive difference in the world is more important than the professional recognition itself. And I believe there is one more, which is just essentially the CSR and ethics in action. So there's another graphic I put together. And then with this one, there are some interactive buttons here. So these will take you to just a couple businesses that are doing it. More of the big name ones that we hear of. With Nike, I used the article that we read in class, kind of speaking of how they've messed up in the past, as well as how they're trying to do a more ethical business now. And then there's Starbucks, Google, Levi is doing a lot with human rights and inclusivity, as well as trying to reduce water on their production. I think that was it on that page. And then for the quote, I did use one of the interviews. And though this doesn't, it's a little bit different because this is from a conservationist. So that business is already based on CSR in a sense. But she talks about how when she was working in Detroit, she says that it's a neighborhood where there was a high gang violence, high unemployment, and youth poverty, and the lack of jobs. And so that sustainability to her is a whole life cycle. She was there planting trees, but then teaching the community and the kids specifically how to continue to care for those afterwards. And then they were also working with getting them into education and on career paths that would lead them into this type of conservation or ecology businesses. I did think about changing that after hearing, I think it was Corey's presentation though, when you mentioned the book, I was thinking about a book I read in one of my other classes. It was Lost Mountain, and how, although there aren't likely to be any direct quotes in that about a business doing CSR, there is a lot about businesses that aren't, particularly the coal mining businesses. So I think that would have been a really good one to use for the quote. And I know that there was something else I was thinking of that I regretted not including, and I don't remember what that was now, but that's it. The info page is just saying that this is a student project and then the sources.
Well, fantastic. Thank you for the tour through your project. I know from experience, those are really, you make it look very easy to put all that together. It just flows so simply, but I know that it's a very complicated process to not just make the presentations with the artwork or the graphics that you find or develop, but just to present that in a really clear way. And I thought you did a really, really nice job of that, to provide this information for folks, what they would need to know about. But so I guess a related question, as maybe other folks are thinking about all of this. So is corporate social responsibility something you'd be interested to do or work on or advance? Once you've graduated and you're going out and like, what can I do for sustainability?
I suppose potentially. I think that the reason I was drawn to that for the project was because of my interest in the more environmental aspect of sustainability, land conservation, but also social rights and justice. So I think just as a consumer, I was drawn to it because I would definitely fall into that group of wanting to go for a business that's doing that, but I also would want to work for or work with a business that is doing that or helping them to do that. So yeah, I suppose I could say so. I think the thing that I was forgetting that I wanted to include was greenwashing, just being vigilant of that, if a company's actually doing CSR or not.
So that somewhat relates to my follow-up question, which in terms of CSR, what, in your opinion, needs more focus or more of an uplift? So if you were going to work in this area or make a recommendation to someone overseeing corporate social responsibility, what needs more focus right now or attention?
I think instinct is to say environment, but that has become kind of the top because there's been such a push for that. I would say the same thing with social justice and human rights. That's obviously something that I think is extremely important, but again, has been something that businesses have been gravitating towards. I've been thinking a lot today actually about health and then like areas of poverty in relation to sustainability, just because of another assignment I was working on earlier, and then thinking about Lost Mountain again. So I guess I would say if there's a way that they are impacting a community's ability to lead a healthy and fulfilled life, as opposed to, say, those mining communities or other industrial communities where people are coming down with different illnesses, they don't have green space to get out and walk, they're not in very good jobs.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a slightly different focus. I think you're right, than most folks are really thinking about doing with this. So, other questions from the class? Let's see anything.
Yeah, hey, I was just curious. I guess it had more to do with the experience of like building your own website. But do you think like it was easy enough to where like anybody could do it? I think that the idea of making your own website, which is something I've done for myself. I didn't use Wix. I used a different thing. So I don't know. You don't have to include that. But do you think that anybody really can make their own website?
I think if you know what you want to do with it, yeah. Once I wrote down on paper my idea of how I wanted it to go, it was pretty easy. It's just very time consuming, very tedious.
All righty. Well, I think that concludes our project presentations for this semester. So big round of applause for everybody. Nice work. I know that's tough to not just work on it, but able to talk about it in front of folks. So thanks for folks for watching. We're going to put links to the website, to the podcast, to videos, where you can follow up and take a listen, take a look, explore, click away, and really see the work behind this, as this was just kind of the highlights of the good work of making some tough connections amongst a lot of different things that we've looked at this semester. And we actually looked at more topics than what we heard today, but I thought it was really neat to see there wasn't anything duplicated here today, that everyone found a different focus and a unique set of connections. So